Hey everyone, I was just up on Reddit earlier and I came across something on Learn Japanese, the subreddit there. And I thought I would just talk about it freely here as I was thinking when I read it, talk about what I thought about this, maybe help the guy out a little bit, if he even watches this. I feel like I can't learn Japanese. I'm sorry for this lengthy rant, but I need a community to get this off. I have been learning Japanese for years, and I have felt I have made little progress. I barely understand a children's book, and my listening skills aren't that good. Along with that, Japanese seems to have 1,000 grammar rules to memorize, which I don't have time to learn all. All that seems like it could be excused if I had someone to practice with. I don't. In order to practice Japanese, I went to a website called ChatPad. I could understand them, but they couldn't understand me. I am about JLPTN4, but I don't think I can do any more. Are my concerns valid? Does anyone go through this? What are some things I can do to help myself? Thank you for the answers. Well, first, just off the top, I don't know what ChatPad is. It sounds like a place you can meet Japanese people, which I think it's a really good idea that you're doing that. One thing that I would tell anyone serious about learning Japanese is you have to find someone to talk to that will reliably talk to you. If you are lucky enough to find a friend, that's great. But a lot of us aren't even good at finding friends in our own language, much less in another language. So what I like to recommend is go up to italki, italki.com, italki.com, and look for a relatively reasonably priced tutor. You don't have to get a teacher, which is fine if you want that, but for like $5 to like maybe $14 an hour, you can essentially game the system and get a friend that has to do what you want to do in terms of speaking Japanese. And they will be very good at listening to what you want to say and then talking back to you because you are going to be the subject, right? You're paying them to be your friend, right? And as a paid friend, I mean, they're not there thinking that. They're thinking, oh, I'm helping this guy teach Japanese. But really, you need a friend that can talk to you reliably in Japanese. So for example, I'll say when I hire tutors or teachers on Korean, a lot of the discussion would just be me talking in Korean to them, and half of every private class I took in Korea was me just talking about stuff that I experienced maybe the day before in Korea, and I wanted to talk about it. When I was learning Korean, even in the very beginning, the teacher was asking me, about my family, and my Korean was just really bad. I couldn't hear what she was saying also. Similar problems with you, but as you struggle to learn to use what you know, your brain starts putting it together. You can't really think of this as a totally conscious thing. It's not something that you will understand. There will be a day when you keep speaking Japanese and you keep learning Japanese and listening. There will be times where all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I understood that with zero effort. Or, oh my God, I said that without thinking. Or I have this happen a lot. Even in Korean, it happens where I'll say something. Mostly this happens in Japanese, not as much as in Korean. Because my Korean is still relatively new compared to my Japanese. But with Japanese, I'll say things that I must have obviously learned from immersion methods because I don't know what they are in English, but I know that in this particular spot, it makes sense. Everyone goes through these plateaus where they feel like they're not doing well. It's happened to me in Japanese. It happened to me in Korean. I suppose I just should say, if you're watching this, you don't know who I am, but I grew up in Japan. My wife is Japanese and I'm 50 now, but I started Japanese essentially when I was 12. So I've been through probably every plateau you've ever been through and, 20, 40 more, So I've been through a bunch of them. And then I went ahead and started in 2012 learning Korean and started with all of those similar plateaus. But the number one thing you can do is get someone to talk to. I think you've already established that you understand that that's what needs to happen, but you need to not get down when you don't understand them. You need to just keep pushing forward. And one thing I like to tell my Japanese students is say what you can say, not what you want to say. If you focus on what you can say, it puts a little bit of a filter in front of what you're getting ready to say. You say, boom, English is in my head. I want to say this. And you go, but I can't say that. So what can I say to relay a similar message? An example I like to give is, let's say you have a henzutsu, which is a migraine headache. You don't have to say henzutsu because you don't know the word. You don't have to say even zutsu because maybe you don't even know how to say headache. But you probably know how to say atama ga itai desu. Atama ga tottemo itai desu. You could say that. It's a very easy thing to say. And then if you say, well, I don't like that. I don't like that I'm not saying what I want to say. The key to that is then, when you come up to something that you want to say that you can't say, make a mental note of it or put it in a notebook and say, I'm going to go learn how to say that. When you learn how to say that, that's a thing you can say. What I always like to also recommend is that you start out specifically by learning things that you want to say, things that matter in your life. Don't focus on these big Anki lists that are, include words like rectal itch, just words that you don't need that might be in there that you're going to forget anyway because you don't use it. Because the key to learning Japanese and any language is using it and building up some experiences for your brain to say, oh, these are worthy to put into my long-term memory instead of just storing it right on the top when it's happening. I think you're doing a lot of right things, but maybe you need to make Japanese more a part of your life. Right now, when I read what you're saying, it seems like you're doing a lot of studying. If you think you have to study 1,000 grammar or you think there's 1,000 grammar rules, there really isn't. There's a few hundred max. The biggest thing that happens in Japanese is you learn a simple grammar and then you learn another simple grammar and then you stack them together to say the bigger thing. And those stack into a subclause of a bigger sentence. And then when you hear it all together, it's like, oh my God, I can't keep track of it all because maybe you needed to learn it in smaller parts. Maybe you needed to do more practice with it. I mean, I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but you're not alone in thinking that you haven't made progress. I'm just going to go ahead and look at some of the responses here and see what people have said. Let's see here. As I always ask in these posts, could you elaborate on what resources you've been using, those quote unquote years you've described? I like that he put those in quotes because that's something that I like to say also. A lot of people will say, I've been studying Japanese for 5 years. When really what happened was 5 years ago, they started and then on and off, they would do it. They were gung-ho in the beginning, then they dropped out of it. It's like how I play Pokemon. I play Pokemon Go where I started out really gung-ho, going to the parks every day. And then little by little, I started not doing it. And then I didn't do it at all. And now I'm back into it again, right? And now my level's going up in Pokemon. It's the same thing with Japanese. You have to be consistently going through it. You have to every day do something with your Japanese. You have to talk in your head. Normally, what a lot of people like to say is, I understand what's being said, but I can't respond. It's interesting that you're saying the opposite, which leads me to believe that maybe you need to watch more. Maybe you need to take a different variety of what you're watching. Spoken Japanese, like on YouTube or dramas, are completely different from each other. What people say to each other versus what's in a scripted dialogue is completely different too. Also, depending on what you're watching, if you're watching like an anime that's heavily based in story, do you know how much effort goes into making dialogue? It's not just like, oh, are you hungry? It's like, my stomach is empty. I feel a pit of desire to eat. Whatever weird thing they might be saying something like that. And you're going, oh my God, I'll never understand this. I'll tell you what, when I read Japanese books, same thing happens to me. I am not a book reader. I just don't read Japanese books. If anything, I don't even barely read English books anymore. I just listen to them. So when I do occasionally pick up a Japanese book and start reading, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what they're saying. I don't know this. I don't know that. Because I just really haven't done enough of that particular thing. What's written in books is different. What's written in a textbook is different. So you have to understand that you're looking at two different sources that are different styles of speaking, perhaps. Can you share X books? I think he means textbooks, online guides, etc. What you've been using. Another important question, how much time devoted on a daily, weekly basis? For example, someone setting aside just 5 minutes daily for Duolingo wouldn't understandably get anywhere meaningful after a few years. I would say you wouldn't get mostly anywhere with Duolingo, which is, in my opinion, just a glorified flashcard program. But hey, don't take my opinion. I am extremely biased against all other materials. I agree. Years tells you nothing. True. Cumulative hours is a much more helpful in understanding. This is what OP says here. I've used so many online resources that I couldn't tell you all of them. Some of the ones I used were the Misa YouTube channel. I forgot, it's Japanese Amo Misa, I think. Tae Kim's Guide, Anki, and Ani Melon. Oh, I figured out this guy's problem. He didn't use George Trombley. He didn't use From Zero. Oh, shit. Sorry, I spoke too soon. I promise you I did not see this ahead of time. I recommend Japanese from Zero. It teaches you didn't. Damn it, this guy didn't. It teaches you didn't, and it's one of the best. What does that mean? He also has a YouTube channel. Well, I did not know that was coming, guys. Thank you, Tranced Slut. Maybe you need a tutor. Okay, there we go. We're on the same line here. Or would at least enjoy it. Have 1,000 grammar rules to remember. In my opinion, the grammar is one thing, but the biggest thing in my mind is the vocab, which is way, way, way more memorization than grammar. This is true. When I speak Korean or Japanese, and even at one point when I was really pushing hard into Chinese, I never once, ever said, oh, wait, what's that grammar? Oh, no one ever does. It's always, oh, what's that word? The word is where you're going to get lost. So I absolutely think that is really good advice. Output is way harder than input. Absolutely. He said I could understand them, but they couldn't me. Oh, I misread that. Yeah. Okay. I thought he was saying, yeah, that's what most people say. And I misread that. Okay. So good. I'm glad I got corrected on that. But yeah, you could study all day long. If you're not putting those words out of your mouth and getting your mouth to formulate those things, you can't do Japanese. And you know what else happens when you actually do more output? You actually remember the input more and you can understand the input more. Like if you are a professional basketball player and you're watching people play basketball, you will see their mistakes and you will understand what they're trying to do strategy-wise as they're going down the court. But if you don't play basketball, you're just watching it with completely less information. I watch a guy called Thermal for StarCraft. And I love StarCraft, my favorite game, probably just as much as I love Pokemon Go, right? And I watch this guy, Thermal, and he's an absolute genius. If you want to watch someone really play this game amazingly, it's Thermal. 75% of the YouTube I've been watching in the last month is this guy. But because I've played StarCraft a lot, even though I can't play his level, I understand the things he's saying. But if I had never played StarCraft and he said, oh, you're going to do a barracks proxy, or I'm going to do double rack to gas, or gas before my double rack, whatever would you understand what that means if you haven't experienced it? I could have read about that, but I don't think I would put it together as quickly as I've played the game. I know what those things mean. I know what the units are for each of the races that this guy is playing. And even though I could never probably be this guy's level, I can understand what he's saying. So if you speak Japanese a lot more, you're going to do so much better understanding. And this is the same thing that happened with me in Korean. I'll tell you, this is a kind of a similar thing. I went to Korea, and in that first week, I actually made friends, real Korean friends, through another friend. So I didn't really get those friends on my own, but I was with Korean people, and they invited me to go sing karaoke, okay? And I had been listening to a lot of K-pop, so I thought, okay, I could probably do this. I can read Korean pretty good, and I know this group, and I can even sing parts of that song in my mind. At least I thought I could. It was 21, and the song was I Don't Care. And that song to me seems pretty slow, at least compared to their other songs. And I put it on, I thought, I got this. And I couldn't. I couldn't do it at all. And it happened with every other song I tried that night. And this is before I had done a lot of Korean karaoke. But once my Korean got better and better and better, I was able to sing better because my brain had experienced doing those phrases. So the brain isn't just looking at a clump of things it doesn't know. It's like, oh, I know what that is. It glances at it. It goes back to that subconscious thing I was talking about earlier, where this isn't a lot of conscious stuff. It's a lot of subconscious stuff. It's a lot about building these things in your brain that your brain understands, like equations that your brain can instantly figure out. So it sees a structure on the screen and it knows it. And once you've spoken those structures, when you hear them, they'll be so obvious. Very, very obvious. All right, back to the comment. So output is harder than input. Yeah, Chesney19 is absolutely correct. At N4, I wouldn't expect too much of yourself. True. Good luck and don't give up. That's the key thing. Don't give up. What you said was reasonable, and I understand. Thank you. This guy is very humble. I like it. VChen99901. I am a native English speaker, and I've been dabbling in Japanese for about 3+ years now as a hobby. I have some of the same feelings as you do. Whenever I listen to something in Japanese, I simultaneously amazed how much I understand compared to before I started learning it at all. And at the same time, I'm absolutely dismayed at how little I understand and how little I have to show for 3 years of work. Don't even talk about speaking. I've never spoken Japanese to a real Japanese person. This is something, guys, I hear a lot, and I don't understand how that's possible. When I started learning Korean, I immediately found a person to be a Korean friend. When I started learning Chinese, I immediately found someone on HelloTalk to be a Chinese friend. It's the number one first thing that I do. After all, like, why even learn the language if you're not speaking it, is how I always feel. Of course, everyone has their own reasons. It might be just wanting to watch anime or something like that. Just surprises me. Like, big hint here. If you have a friend that you like, or a girl that you think is cute, or a guy that you think is cute, some motivation to learn the language, it's a billion times more important to your brain when you show it with your heart how much you love Japan or Korea or China. Like right now, look, I'll be honest, I'll be open. I'm not as excited about China anymore. So my desire to learn Chinese has really dropped, just for a ton of reasons. And a lot of hate from a recent video I made just made me really kind of not want to go to China, right? Don't want to go to China. Okay. I've never spoken Japanese. If I ever meet, I'll probably be able to say, watashi wa watashi no nihongo level, it's level, sorry about that, wa mada totemo heta desu. Level wa hikui might be better, low. My level is unskillful is probably weird. You can probably just shorten this to, watashi no nihongo wa mada heta desu. Watashi no nihongo wa mada dame desu. Yurushite kudasai. Yeah. But honestly, they would understand you, so we're good. I don't know about you, but I have to remind myself, I'm just doing this as a hobby and dabbing here and there. I'm not taking classes. I'm not immersing in Japan. I have a full-time job and 2 kids, absolutely. It's about the journey and the tomodachi we made along the way. True. So true. A lot of times I talk about this also in videos, but when you're learning Japanese, it's not like you're running towards a fluency, like ticker tape parade where all of a sudden you get there and you're fluent in Japanese. No, it's the journey is the fun part of it. And the conversation that you have with a Japanese person about grammar that you didn't understand, that is the conversation. That is the enjoyable part. FWIW. Don't know what that means. Everyone assumes these are simple, but for learning, they're actually not that easy. Children's books. Children's books are not that easy. They're still native materials and may use onomatopoeia or yakugo, character speech, like old man dialects or baby words, and other simple words that early learners might never have encountered or never need, like, polar bear. Also remember that children may not academically understand every word, grammar point to enjoy that's true. Okay, I'm going to end on this because this could get long. There are no good materials, really. There's no perfect material for learning. There will always be something in the material that you're listening to that is above your pay grade, that's way above your level. It's like even me all the time. Like I talk to my wife and she'll say a word I don't know. Like I think a very recent one that I can remember was, I think it was Zendai Mimon, which I had never heard in Japanese. Zendai Mimon. And I have to look it up to make sure I'm getting it right, but it means precedent. Prior precedent. So I'm going to go ahead and actually look it up to make sure I'm saying it right. Zendai Mimon. There we go. So an unprecedented, okay? Did I say that right earlier? I don't know. So there are going to be words that come up, and I've been learning Japanese now you give me 2 more years and it'll be 40 years of me learning Japanese, and I still come across things that I don't know, okay? So yeah, the materials will never be perfect, but that just means try to understand what you can. Look, there are sentences that are untranslatable for you just because you don't know the culture, you don't know the history. And I like to give this example. Let's say you're watching a drama and someone says something in the drama and it's funny. You know that it's funny because the other person laughed. And then they hand them a pillow and say, "Zabuton ichimai." And you look it up. Okay, you got one zabuton, whatever that translates to is like sitting pillow or something like that. One. You get one sitting pillow. You have translated it perfectly. What does it mean? There was a show. There still is a show. I think it still goes on, where they have manzai, comedians, sitting in like on their knees, like Seiza style. and they're telling jokes. And when they do a joke that's funny, the main host goes, he does this, and then they bring him a zabuton. And the more funny that you are, the more zabuton that stack up underneath you. You could not understand that. You haven't earned that level of understanding through the culture. If you're only studying the language grammar rules, you are essentially dead. Because if you only study grammar, you end up saying things that make grammatical sense in English, but in Japanese. Like you might say, for example, oh, my bad. Watashi no warui. It's completely correct in English. At least in modern English, we say, oh, no, my bad, my bad. Watashi no warui. That doesn't work in Japanese. They don't say that. And then there are things that they'll say in Japanese that like that pillow example, that when they say it back to you, you won't understand it, even though you understand it. Wakarimasu ka? I think that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.